All right, hello everyone. So today we have a student from Carnegie Mellon. His name is Matthew. Matthew, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Matthew Frame. I am a material science and engineering major at Carnegie Mellon University with a minor in electronic materials.
All right, awesome. So Matthew, so I just really straight up, why material science? Like, why was that your interest or focus of wanting to study in college?
So I was first introduced to material science through chemistry. Like I really enjoyed chemistry in high school, and I wanted to pursue something that was more engineering focused though. So I looked into the field of material science and found it really attractive because it kind of mixes together chemistry and physics and engineering. So it's a very interdisciplinary field, and I like exploring the relationships between those between each of those fields to do something good.
All right, awesome. And I mean, I feel like, when I was in high school, I wasn't really familiar with the major of material science until I think it was maybe you were the one that actually introduced it to me when you told me you were going to apply for it. So if you could just give a brief description, like what would you do with a degree in material science in the future? Like, what does it specifically focus on other than what you've already described?
So material science is essentially, well, the study of materials, but more specifically, it's the study of how the microscopic and atomic properties or I guess structure of a material affect the properties of said material. So let's say you're a material scientist specializing in steel or like metals. You would focus on how the lattice structure of that material affects like the metal's properties, and then you can apply that to engineering projects. Like say if a project demands a steel with a specific properties of stress, I guess, yeah, like particular properties, you would engineer that material or like select that material for that project. Um, or if you're on the more research and development side, what you would do is you would develop new materials to suit properties that are called for by a particular project.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, that's definitely, I feel like, when a lot of people just think of generic engineering or, studying chemistry or physics, they don't really see how interesting you can actually like dive into the field. And I feel like with material science, there's a lot more that you can actually do other than, just focusing on like chemical engineering or whatnot.
It's a
So,
very broad field, yeah. And I
yeah.
think it's one of the first that's formed through synthesis rather than narrowing down a subject because again, it's basically an intersection of a bunch of different fields.
Yeah, and I think that's great, especially if you're a student who has a lot of interest in, like you mentioned, chemistry, physics, and engineering. It's definitely a field to go into because you can get a little bit of everything, like the best of each world.
Mhm.
All right. So I guess, now that we got the major covered, let's talk about Carnegie. So why Carnegie?
Well, I would be lying if I said that Carnegie was my first choice, but I was attracted to the school's, I guess, vibe, um, in that it's a very good environment for learning, in that it's very supportive and also it's very research oriented. So one of the reasons why I wanted to go there once I've decided on my major is because it is very easy to get research at Carnegie, especially since yeah, it's a very prestigious school in that respect. And while prestige isn't really something that I was looking for, since it is so highly viewed in research areas, even in that side, I did want to go there. And I also liked the general vibe of the school. Again, like visiting campus felt natural being there. And people are really nice. And even though it's a very difficult school, I think we're ranked like fourth or fifth for most work or most stress or something.
Uh,
Um, the people are very supportive, and it's not competitive in that you're always collaborating with your peers, and it's never a cutthroat environment.
oh yeah, I mean no, that's definitely awesome. And you mentioned that Carnegie is like, it's for sure it's one of the best research institutions in the United States. And would you say that you in the future for like a career or what you plan to do you plan on going into research and academia?
Yeah, I definitely want to do research and focus more on the developing new materials side of things and exploring the science behind that. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be in academia. Since mat sci is such a prevalent field in research and new technologies, especially like emerging technologies, like I believe that I could do research either in industry or in academia, and I still have to decide on which. We'll see.
All right, yeah, no, that's awesome. I feel like it's good that you're keeping your options open, and the fact that material science does give you the opportunity to do that. I guess another thing just to cover on Carnegie, you're from like California, and Carnegie's all the way on the other side of the country, pretty much on the East Coast side. So,
Yeah.
did you really ever have any like fears or concerns going to an out-of-state school, or like, did you ever worry about how you would adapt to their environment?
I was worried about the cold coming from Southern California, where it's super hot, like
Hmm.
every day. I was
Yeah,
worried about the cold, but honestly, if you buy a nice coat, or not even a nice coat, if you prepare yourself and get proper winter gear, it's not bad at all.
no, it's awesome. This is actually a funny trend. I noticed everyone, especially from those who are from Southern California, the one thing they talk about actually with going to schools out of state is the weather. Um, do you think that the weather, it's just something interesting I've thought about. Do you think like the weather will play a factor into like how you perform academically?
I thought it did, but it didn't. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's good. All right, awesome. And then I guess another thing, coming from, you like we mentioned, going from Southern California all the way to the East Coast, you're going
Mhm.
to a completely different social environment, just like, like a different environment in the sense that it's not the one that you're used to, the comfort of your own home. How did you find yourself like at least like getting used to the culture there, or like I said, the overall environment and feel?
Um, I wouldn't call the environment at CMU like strictly East Coast. Like I think the state that sends the most students to CMU is California. So the
Okay.
result is an environment that's like very, I guess, geographically diverse. So like you have students from all over the country, like not just the Pittsburgh area and not just the East Coast. So I didn't find it too difficult to adjust um, to that, like being on the East Coast. I'd say most of the difficulty was just the regular adjustment to being in a new environment that's not necessarily specific to Carnegie or any other school. But I was able to get past that through extracurriculars and stuff. Yeah, I
All right,
wouldn't
perfect.
say that because it was on the East Coast, it was any more difficult than any other school to
All
adjust.
right. Yeah, it's awesome. And a lot of people they said, when they get to the school, yeah, definitely, definitely you have that initial challenge, but once you overcome it, I feel like people get used to it and, eventually assimilate into their new environment. So now let's take a step back. Let's go back to when we were seniors in high school, applying to college. And I guess first off, we could just give like a holistic overview of it. How would you summarize the college application process for you?
I'm not sure. I'd say it's flawed in a sense, like the process in general.
Hmm.
Um, First, it costs a lot of money, so I feel like people from less fortunate backgrounds aren't able to apply to as many schools and then aren't able to get the same opportunities that you or I have had.
Hmm.
And personally, for me, I was very busy in the fall during the college
Yeah,
application process. So I don't feel like I had enough time to work on it. And I do feel like it's very time consuming and that a lot more emphasis is placed on it than I think should be, especially by other high school students. Like
hmm,
I've noticed that in high school, a lot of people talk about like, oh, I have to get into this college and I'm going to do this and this and this and this to do it. And honestly, I feel like that creates a toxic environment, like a
yeah.
toxically competitive environment, and which is not really the most conducive to learning or for applying to college.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally understand what you do, especially when the general like vibe of the high school is so focused on just getting into college or getting into the best college compared to your peers. I feel like it does create that sense of toxicity because it's incredibly competitive. I mean, even if you just take it out of consideration of your own high school, you're competing with high schools from across the nation, those who may be at a higher ranking or even lower than you, yet the applicant pool is just huge. So I think it's definitely stressful in that sense because it feels like you're constantly competing and it becomes such a heavy focus on like, that part of senior year. But,
Yeah.
you know, in saying that it is a toxic and competitive environment, what would you say was your best like support system? Because obviously you want to surround yourself with people that actually encourage you and support you. So what was your way of creating the support system?
Um, Part of my support system was friends who have already graduated and then they're already past like this toxic competitive environment. So they're able to reassure me that it does get better. And then also friends who are also going through it with me. It was nice to be able to talk to them about their experiences, especially since they were non-judgmental, I guess.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so mostly friends, I'd say, were a support system
All
for
right.
that. And I would also like to say that with respect to the toxic environment, honestly, just you do you. It's a lot easier to get through it if you ignore what other people are doing, and I think that's part of what helped me get through it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was actually phrased perfectly. Regardless of what the situation is, as long as you're focusing on yourself and focus on the ones that do care about you and will support you through that. That's what's gonna get you through. You know, uh, I'll just mention this really fast. So obviously, you have a twin brother, and pretty much I would say there's no like there's no real older or younger sibling. It's about you guys are pretty much the same age, right? So obviously you didn't have any like sibling support to help you with. So what was your way of understanding the college process, like getting information and knowledge? Was it through family? Was it through friends, upperclassmen? Was it through school resources? Like what did you find was the best way to get information about the college process?
Mostly it was through independent research. So I did go to some college fairs and look up like, oh, what exactly I have to do. And I'd also say that a lot of it was through the school. Like
Mhm.
I know a lot of people dislike meeting with counselors and whatnot because it's boring or it seems like unnecessary, but they honestly do have a lot of useful information, and I highly recommend going to talk to them.
Mhm. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's definitely important to mention that independent research plays a role, especially for students that aren't as, I guess, fortunate as we were to attend a high school that actually did provide those resources. So
Mhm.
just having to use the internet or talking to people, I think, is definitely something to keep in mind for those students. And I guess, just to wrap up the college application aspect of, for you, if you go back to senior year and fix any regrets or change anything that you've done in the past, what would you personally have done different?
Um, I would have probably started writing my CMU app earlier than 3 days before the deadline because that was kind of
Oh,
stressful. But honestly, I feel like I did all that I could, and I'm happy where I am now, so I don't really have any regrets.
all right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, for sure, all of us wonder that we could have done things differently, but I think for the most part, most of us are pretty happy where we ended up. So obviously, no major regrets on that. So yeah, let's transition more into your life at Carnegie now. So I guess first and foremost, what was something that you got to do in college that you weren't able to do back home in Southern California?
Um, hmm. I would say that there's a lot more, I guess, freedom. And I know that's like a generic answer, but you have a lot more control over your academic life, I think, than you do in high school. Because,
Mm-hmm.
like, in high school, you're forced to sit in class for like 6 hours a day, and you're only doing what's in that class. Whereas in college, you have a lot less class and a lot more homework. So you also have a lot more flexibility to do whatever it is that you want. So I used that extra time that I had to both study and to join some extracurricular activities that are fun.
Right. That's awesome. And could you actually go ahead, actually, let's just talk about a bit of your extracurriculars. Like, so what extracurriculars are you involved in and like, what have you gained from doing them?
I am involved in the Filipino Students Association, which is a cultural club for Filipino students. It's very new, and we haven't honestly done that much yet. But it was nice to be able to connect to other Filipino students on campus. And then I'm also involved in the CMU C Sharp choir, particularly the D flat singers, which is our concert choir. And I think it's really nice to be able to connect with other people and their enjoyment for music in that. And I feel like I've grown a lot as a musician and as a vocalist through that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I mean, I remember back in high school, you were really interested in pursuing something like, a cappella or just like doing
Hmm.
voice performances. So I think it's really great that you were able to get the chance to do that in college, especially since, I would say our high school not necessarily didn't have a club for it. It was like more of a class, but because given,
Yeah.
what classes you were taking, you didn't have the opportunities to really do it. So I think it's great that you were able to find the chance to do so. And, it seems like, you really enjoy it. So it's something that's like pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah.
I guess, let's, I guess, talking about Carnegie itself, being a private institution, there's kind of like this thing where, private schools do have smaller classroom sizes than other people. Would you say you do have a smaller class environment or um, like how do your classes work, I guess, in general?
Um, I can't speak for other schools, so I'm not sure if my classes are in fact smaller or not. But generally, the way a class works is that you have lecture sections and recitation sections, and a lecture can be anywhere from like 100 to I don't know 200 people. I think my
Okay.
physics lecture was quite large, and then each lecture has like 5 or 6 recitation sections where people, which are like small, I guess, discussion sections, but usually you just go over problems, you go over their homework, you discuss with your classmates and try and get through problems there. And then those can have anywhere from 15 to 30 people, usually. Now, I can only speak for first year courses, which tend to be quite large. I know that
Yeah.
next year I only have one class that is greater than 50 students, and that's astronomy, which has around 90 in 2 lectures. And all my other classes are much smaller because at CMU in the Math Sci program, everyone has to take the same core classes each semester. And then there's
Yeah.
25 people in the Math Sci cohort this year, so a lot of my classes will only have 25 people in them.
Oh wow, only 25 students in the Math Sci cohort.
Yeah, for my year at least. CMU isn't a big school. I think we have around 14,000 students, and then a bit more than half of those are grad students. So it's quite small, honestly, when you get to undergrad.
Oh, okay. And in having I guess like 25 students within your graduating class itself, would you say that you've been able to connect more with them or actually befriend a lot of your fellow classmates?
Um, Not yet, because the Math Sci core classes start next year, but I'm sure I'll
Oh,
have the
okay.
opportunity to do so. And from what I've heard from upperclassmen, it's a very tight-knit program, which is nice.
All right, that's awesome. Yeah, and I feel like that just helps gives you another kind of like academic support system while
Yeah.
at university, especially since I feel like finding friends is one thing, but finding that proper support system of classmates and friends and academic advisors and whatnot is also something important to keep in mind of. Um, like we mentioned, being in Math Sci, you have a lot of disciplinary courses or different sciences like chemistry, engineering, physics, and so I guess my question is a two-part question. One, do you have you had experience being in a lab class? And two, what was it like?
Yeah, I've been in a lab class. So first semester I took Intro to Material Science, and and that did have a 3-hour lab section each week. So basically, what we did, well, we did a bunch of different experiments. They're honestly more of demos, like engineering demonstrations, but we covered, or we made our own carbon fiber basically. So we set that in epoxy, and we've also we cast steel and brass alloys in a furnace, and then used microscopy to analyze the structure. And then we subjected those to cold work, which is basically where you squish a metal in order to change its internal crystal structure. And then we
Oh wow.
analyzed the results of that as well. And then we also gained experience with polishing samples for microscopy and stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome. In fact, just listening to you, it sounds like your lab classes have been a lot more interesting than mine. I feel like, yeah, just listening to you, it's like we mentioned, it's very interdisciplinary. You're combining a lot of subjects into the same thing, and considering that this is just an introductory Math Sci class as well too, I feel like already you're getting so much extra like I guess an extra educational experience just being in an intro class, and then who knows what else you'll get when you get into the upper division courses as well too.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And one of the things that this course emphasized was real world processes. So, for example, we conducted stress tests on samples of carbon fiber, fiberglass, and steel in order to plot stress strain curves that show the properties of material when it's under stress. And those are used in the real world quite a bit. And then we also conducted hardness tests on the samples that we cast and cold worked, and those are also used quite often in the real world. So it's really nice to be able to gain access to these techniques and learn how things actually work, because I feel like it's a lot of real world experience.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously the whole point of doing lab classes is to apply just the general textbook knowledge, and see how that actually works when you
Mm-hmm.
do something, hands-on experience. And I feel like like you mentioned, a lot of times in lab classes, you do get skill experience that you can use, in the future, whether it be for you going into research or maybe another just science student, maybe trying to train to be a doctor in the future, who knows, getting those experience using those different apparatus and instruments. So I think it's definitely something that, whether you're STEM or not, would you recommend whether STEM student, humanities student, to at least experience one lab class in college to get the experience of knowing what it's like?
Yeah, I'd say so. I feel like lab classes can also teach a lot of practical skills that are applicable to anything. So, like, I guess patience, the ability to use the scientific method and to investigate subjects that you're interested in. I feel like you can learn a lot from a lab class in that respect.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And the one thing you mentioned about patience, I feel like patience is definitely one you need in in some lab classes, especially since sometimes you might just be sitting around waiting for something to boil or
Yeah.
whatnot. But yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
definitely something to keep in mind of. Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
It definitely takes like a meticulous sort of patience to conducting an experiment in the lab. And I feel like that's something that people can learn a lot from.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And I guess moving out from a little bit away from I guess academics for a bit, I guess overall in college. So, like we mentioned, going into college is a different experience for everyone. And when we get to college, we all face our own challenges. What would you say was your biggest challenge when you were in college? And how do you believe you overcame that challenge?
Honestly, I'd say my biggest challenge was adjusting to the workload. Now, I came from a high school that was quite work intensive, but still, I don't believe that it fully prepared me for CMU. Because CMU is a very rigorous school, and I
Yeah.
remember my first midterm, I did not do so well. So I think adjusting my mindset from that high school mindset of, oh yeah, I'm gonna put stuff off, I don't need to study for this, and adjusting to that, okay, yeah, I'm gonna spend half of the day in the library to learn this material was quite difficult, I think, at first. But after that first bad midterm grade, it became a lot easier to adjust, I'd say. So yeah, I'd
Right.
say mainly academic rigor is a lot, or it's a much higher expectation in college. Now, so take for example an AP test. Now, AP classes are supposed to represent college classes, and they're supposed to what's it called? And you can often earn college credit with them.
Yeah.
But the expectation in an actual college class is so much higher. So let's say for on the AP Physics test, in order to get a 5, which is like the passing grade, like highest passing grade, you need to get like a 60% or higher
Mhm.
on the test. But then you take an actual physics course in college, and then of course the A is 90%. So
Yeah.
the expectation is a lot more difficult, and the material is a lot more difficult as well.
Yeah, I know. I definitely agree with you on that one. I mean, even for me going into college, the way that exams are formatted, it's a lot more different. I feel like in high school, if you messed up one exam, you would still have plenty of time to catch up. But in college, because you're not taking, exams on a weekly basis or like every other week, you're taking like maybe at most 4 exams probably in a semester or
Wait,
depending on quarters
wait.
and stuff.
I had 15 weeks first semester and like 13 exams, so it's a fun
Oh, okay.
time. Should go to CMU.
Never mind. Different story for you. But I feel like, yeah, I mean, at least for me, just being a human bio student, I had like 4 exams in a semester for like bio. What class was it that you had that was like 13 exams?
I mean, my physics class had like 4 midterms and our final. I don't know, I only had 3 midterms, sorry. But no, I had 4, sorry. But and then
Yeah.
maths I had 3. Econ and math also had a lot. So yeah, it's a fun time.
Yeah, and they add up too. I mean, I guess I'm more referring to like per each individual class. Like in high school, like per each individual class, you would have plenty of tests over a semester or yeah, pretty much. But then in college, every quarter or semester, I feel like there's a limited number of exams for each class that composes of your grade. I feel
Yeah.
like grades in college are a lot more based off of just exams and lab classes if we have them, but or yeah, big papers,
Mhm.
but homework assignments and mini assignments aren't there to pad your grade or to accumulate like they did in high school. So yeah, definitely adjusting
Mhm.
to it. And you mentioned that the first midterm you took, it wasn't the best grade ever, yet you still did better from it. So how did you find the
Yeah.
motivation to do even better than last time? Because I feel like, at least from when I was in school and I heard students did bad the first time, a lot of them actually just started to give up and they felt like they couldn't do it anymore. Like, in future exams or even future classes, they would change their majors after one midterm because they felt like they couldn't handle it. In your case, what was your way of like
Really?
over?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I guess for you, what was your way of finding the motivation to still to do even better than what happened?
I think part of it is that I'm a naturally very stubborn person. And then also, I made sure to go and talk to my professor and to go to office hours and to learn the material again and to make sure that everything would be okay. And I also made sure to try harder on the homework because I think um, in high school, a lot of homework assignments are just graded for completion. It's like if you did
Yeah,
it, you'll get like a check mark and full points in the assignment. But then in college, all of the homework assignments are graded like a test. So
yeah,
I
exactly.
also started trying to work a lot more on that. And I went to some extra study sessions and everything worked out.
All right, yeah, that's awesome. And, definitely, I like how you mentioned office hours and talking to your professors. Especially given that some lecture classes can have up to 200 students or even more. People like, oh, that professor probably doesn't have time to talk to me, but just emailing them or reaching out to them, they do care about you, and how you're doing. So it's definitely
Yeah.
important to reach out to them. Especially if you need help, and maybe you have a group of friends that maybe everyone's clueless. I've been in situations where that's been the case. You could have the smartest kid in the room, and he'll still not know what to
Mhm.
do. It's important to communicate with your professors or even the TAs in general because they know what they're talking about. All
Yeah.
right, great.
hmm
And I guess, just to wrap up this entire video, if you could give advice to high school students, whether that be about the college application
hmm
process, the college lifestyle, or just life advice in general, what would you tell them?
Um, hmm. I would say to not, or I guess one piece of advice, I guess, going into college I would give, I would advise high school students to not bind their happiness to any one particular expectation. So, like,
Mhm.
not to go into college expecting, or I guess not to go in with preconceived notions. Like, I know there's a lot of like cultural stereotypes about what college should be and what's supposed to happen there. But I feel like a lot of people do go into college like expecting something to happen, like whether it's like say getting significant other or joining a particular club. I feel like a lot of people go into college expecting to have that one thing that matters to them happen, and I feel like and it may not actually happen for them, so I feel like it's important not to bind your happiness to any one expectation and to just go into college completely open-minded, I think, and to like explore what's there rather than going into college like, oh, I'm going to do this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a
So I
good
guess
thing.
staying open-minded is my piece of advice.
Yeah, and no, I think that's definitely true, especially for those who pretty much like some students, they'll live their entire life thinking that, oh, they're going to do this, this, and this as well too. And like you mentioned, they set those expectations because they're going to say, oh, if I'm going to be this in the future, or if I'm going to get here, I have to do this, this, and this. But I guess sometimes people don't understand that there's going to be unforeseen circumstances, and like you mentioned, those expectations probably won't be reached sometimes because of something that'll happen between now and then. So it's important to stay open minded. And I really like that advice. Definitely, it applies to everyone, high school, college students. Like, for us, I think even afterwards, when we go into the work field, we have to understand to be open minded with everything.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, awesome. So, what? Obviously, thank you, Matthew, for coming to
Oh, yeah,
talk
no
with us on this
problem.
video. Yeah, we definitely
Mhm.
appreciate you taking the time to explain it, and we hope that everyone watching this will get enough information, based on a
Yeah,
lot of things that you covered today. So, yeah, other than that, thank you so much.
thanks for having me.